Welcome to our podcast today. Our focus is going to be on looking at organisational transformation. Now, I know that's a big topic in organisations right now, and a lot of organisations are looking at how do we transform to stay ahead of all the stuff that's hitting us. But let's take it systemically through and chat about where we've come from in terms of organisational transformation and where we need to go. The context that we're sitting in at the moment obviously is pretty volatile. The VUCA world, which has been talked about for years now, is definitely a world that we're living in. So that VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, that is the world that we are living in. So when you start to talk about transforming organizations, you need to put it into that context. Now, when we look at the context, you just have to look globally at the moment at all the challenges going on, wars in Israel, challenges still in Russia. There's huge amounts of destabilization on economies. Economies going up and down in some cases, exchange rates all over the place. So when you look globally at the world that we are living in, it is super complex. So organizational transformation needs to be housed in that contextual space. Now, if we look backwards for a moment at the way we've done organizational transformation in the past, we've had large teams, what I would describe as probably over-engineering of change programs, and we've done these massive transformational programs that are supposed to deliver amazing results and deliver a change in our organization. That in the past is how we've dealt with it, and we've said that for an organization to transform, they really need to have these complex, as I would say, over-engineered change programs. What we're going to need in the future is something different. We need to be more agile. We cannot wait for transformation to take 3 and 4 and 5 years. I was listening to an organization just recently saying that they were doing a technology change and it was going to take 3 or 4 years. And I'm going, but in 3 or 4 years, your technology is already going to be outdated. So how are you going to deal with that? So we have to get past this need to do long-term change that takes a very long time. We need to actually build more agility into our organizations and be changing on a more granular basis, yes, but also on a more systematic basis on a at regular moments in time. And when you look at the transformational results, Kotter, who's one of the experts in this area, says that up to 80% of transformational change programs actually fail. So we need to get better results. Organizations can't afford to be spending huge amounts of money on long change programs that actually aren't delivering the results they need. We need actual change that is happening on a day-to-day basis, transforming our organizations and finding new ways of doing things, and actually energizing everyone in our organization to be a part of that transformation and change. We want to swing that 80% failing to 80% success. That's really where we want to get to. And in that context, we really need to change our focus away from managing and dealing change to actually building organizations that are resilient and agile and adaptable and have built-in continuous improvement strategies and have the capacity to change on an ongoing basis. The days of long-winded change programs are really gone. And we see that in the work from Charles Handy. Charles Handy talks a lot about the importance of organizations staying ahead of the curve. He uses the sigmoid curve to describe that. And what he says is that organizations have a starting point, they rise to success. If they do nothing, they become irrelevant and go out of business, or they start to get into trouble with their clients and their customers. So, and we've seen lots of organizations do that. It's not hard to see, even if you look in the general arena, Uber, the business of Uber has totally changed the world of taxi organizations. So we see it in lots of ways, but what we need to do is and Charles says that the important thing is to define when your point of change should be. And that should be before you've reached your pinnacle of a success, and you should be doing it on a regular basis. Now, when I started in organizational psychology a fair chunk of years ago, we used to say you had about 5 years between a change you're doing now and the next major transformation you needed to do. In reality, in today's world, you've got 6 to 12 months. So you actually don't have the capacity to have long-winded change programs that take 5 years anymore, because everything has shortened in terms of the requirement for shifting and changing. If you look in the technology arena, look at how AI is taking over and really changing the way businesses work. Or businesses are trying to avoid it and hoping it'll go away, which is actually going to get them into challenges. We hear a lot of the teaching profession complaining about the AI that's coming in and about ChatGPT. But in reality, our young people have been using Google in the same way that ChatGPT works, just in a little bit more of a clunky way. So, hiding away from the changes in the world around us is not going to make them go away. And Charles Handy says, unless we are leading our organizations in transformation on a regular basis, we're actually getting behind. So if you're standing still, if your team or your organization is standing still, you're actually not standing still anymore. You're getting behind every 6 months. So transformation is essential in our organizations. And if we're not constantly transforming, we're actually going to get behind. But the notion of having, long-winded change programs to transform our organizations is past. We need to be doing it in a more agile way and being able to stay up to date with what's going on in the world around us. To do that, there are some clear, definitive things that your organization needs to tackle. And really what we are doing in making these shifts is we are creating agile organizations that can respond and do respond to change on a regular basis. So the first thing that we need to be doing to create that agile organization, that resilient organization that's responding to change in a healthy way and driving transformation on an ongoing basis, the first aspect is that you need to have a really clear vision of where you're trying to take your organization or your team. So the vision is really setting the why of what we're doing. If you take Simon Sinek's Golden Circle idea around getting clear on our why is the starting point of really shifting transformation in our organization. If you're not clear on the why, then you get distracted and long-term changes just never achieve what they're trying to achieve. So we need to get clear on why we're doing what we're doing and what our long-term vision is of the organization, but also track that back into the next 12 months. So what are we trying to achieve in the next 12 months? Get really clear on what that is. But that vision piece is hugely important. I would say too that that's hugely important for you as a leader or you as an individual. Knowing what you're trying to achieve is the starting point of success. Stephen Covey, who's the expert in effectiveness and leadership, Stephen says that you need to begin with the end in mind. So beginning with the clarity of where you're trying to head to helps us to backtrack into today and what we want to focus on today. So if you're trying to become a bigger organization, for example, then if an opportunity comes to increase the size of your organization, you're going to jump to it and tackle it and take on that opportunity. If you want to diversify, then that gives you clarity around your vision for diversification. But that long-term vision is really setting your intention. It's setting your why of your organization or your team. And I think we should have that at two levels. We should have that organizationally, and we should have a why for our team. Our team's why should align with where the organization's going, but might be slightly different because your team might be delivering one aspect of that organizational why. So that's the first starting point. Without clarity, it makes it really hard to know where you're heading. I think of it like flying planes. And if you think about if you're going to fly from one location to the next location, the first thing that you do is you define the route that you're going to take. So you do the navigation to say we're going to go from A to B. Now, that's all very well, and you do it as a direct line from one to the other. But when you get up in the air, you're going to get, the air might shift you, you might be pointing a different direction for part of the time, or you might turn around because the air's changed again, or there might be some wind or some cloud. But in the end, you will still get where you're going because you've got clarity around where you're heading. You know that you're flying from A to B. So that is hugely important as a starting point of guiding transformation in your organization. Where does your organization want to be? And this is why it's so important for all your key stakeholders to be involved in that. Because if you're not in agreement about where you're going, you might have some people pulling in one direction and others pulling in another direction. So you want an aligned vision, and you want everyone in your organization to be really clear around that vision. That the goals and the tactics that you use to get where you're going might change, because those might ebb and flow even over a 6-month period. That might change. But if you're clear around the direction you're heading, then people will know where they're heading to. The best organizations have that really embedded, and you could walk in, certainly the organizations that I see that are highly successful in this space, you can walk in and ask anyone what the organization's vision and they can tell you. So we want that really embedded in our organization so that people actually own that vision in their own jobs. They understand where the organization's heading. That also gives them the agility to go, oh, this opportunity has come to us. Should we take it or shouldn't we? It helps to make decisions, so to help to guide people in decision making. That clarity of vision, really, really important as a starting point for transforming your organization in a volatile environment and staying transformational even when you get knocked around. You know, even when that air takes you off track to where you're heading up in the air, you can come back on track and go back on track. So that's the starting point of us really transforming our organizations, getting a united view on where we're heading, and then embedding that and making sure that everyone in the organization knows where we're heading. So as a starting point, it's hugely important. The second thing that we need to do for our organizations to become truly transformational is we need our leaders and every person in the organization to build their resilience so that they are agile enough to respond to the challenges around them and agile enough to actually shift and change with what's required of them. And in that, we need to build a culture where people are actually resilient, they want to change, they're engaged with change, they're excited in doing new things, they're excited in transforming their small part of the business. So it's not building resilience for no purpose, it's building resilience to build agility. If we have got lots of resilient people, we've got way more agility in our organization. I was with an organization just recently, and they are trying to make some changes. They're trying to change the way people work from a very punitive type of environment into more of a service type of environment. And I was asked to help out with a group of people that were being pressurized to make this change. And one of the gentlemen that I was working with had been doing the same job for 40 years and had never had to change the way he did things. So from a resilience perspective, you've got someone who's been doing exactly the same thing for a very long time and has no idea how to shift and change. Now, that's part of what we need to shift in our organizations. We need to help people to be more resilient. We can't leave people doing the same job for forever because it reduces the resilience levels of those people. They don't know how to shift and change. So when their job suddenly becomes under threat, it causes challenges for them and they're going to resist the change because they become so comfortable. If you think about all the areas that are being impacted by AI at the moment, policy writers, you can write a policy on ChatGPT in 5 minutes. Our actors are getting nervous because they can simulate actors. There's a whole lot of finance people are getting nervous because actually, you can run a set of books with AI. So there's a whole lot of people in our organizations that are going to be challenged with all the artificial intelligence coming in. How we can keep them challenged is by not allowing them to become lacking in resilience. We want them to be resilient. If their job changes and has to transform, that they're able to respond to it, that they're able to respond healthily, and really respond in a way that is generative, that gets the next level of change in the organization. Unfortunately, if you leave people doing the same job for too long, their resilience does drop off. And particularly leaders, we know that, we've seen a lot of high-profile leaders who've stayed in their organizations too long and then had to be kind of not quite thrown out, but politely thrown out because they keep doing the same thing. We've got to stay agile. So however you do that in your organization, you want to keep people agile. You want to keep them from becoming stale in their jobs. In one of the big corporations that I was in an OD role in, we had a rule that you could not stay longer than 7 years in a job, preferably 5. And then you had to go and do something different, even if it was only for 6 months. It doesn't matter. You need to stay resilient. You need to stay agile because you won't be thinking of new ways of doing things. Now, I'm not saying that people can't energize themselves in the same job, but we as organizations need to be consciously building resilience. And building resilience not just in the person's capability, but in how we move our organizations, challenge people with new projects, give them new things to implement and change. The VUCA world is unforgiving, quite frankly. If you're not staying agile, it's going to cause challenges. The changing circumstances are going to continue to challenge us. So the second aspect is that we want to build resilience into our leaders and into all aspects of our business. Now, obviously, there's a lot of research out there. My personal research, which is housed in my book, Leader Resilience, is helpful in this space, but there's lots of research out there. Gail Wagnalds, Seymour Epstein, Martin Seligman. There's lots of research out there around resilience, and I would encourage you to be building that resilience. The third aspect that we need to be focusing on as organizations is we need to be developing our external networks of connectivity. And when I say that, I don't just mean networking. So be really careful. I'm not talking about going out and networking. That's not the only aspect. I'm saying that we need to have a network of information coming into us as organizations so that we're abreast of what's going on out in the workplace. I was with a group of senior leaders last week and was talking about ChatGPT, and a number of them asked me what ChatGPT was. Now, that's shocking with all the networked connections that we have. If we're not aware as leaders in particular of what's going on in the world around us, the stuff that we could potentially be leveraging to change our organizations, we're actually getting behind all the time. So this external network of connections, it might be through reading the news, or it might be through reading AI stuff, or it might be through going to conferences, but you need to bring that information into your organization. Now, I don't believe it's one person's job. I think it's everyone in the organization needs to be finding out ways that we can do things differently. That external networking or creating those external networks that bring data into our organization are hugely important in transforming our organizations. We need to have that knowledge of that external environment. Otherwise, we could miss something. You know, organizations can be using huge amounts of AI right now. And I would say that a lot of organizations are well behind in leveraging the AI that they could use for their organizations. So how are we bringing that knowledge into our organizations? And AI is only one aspect. So we know that the way people want to be led has changed. How are we bringing that knowledge into our organization? How are we staying abreast of it? How are we keeping up to date? I think, particularly leaders need to be keeping their knowledge up to scratch. You should be listening to podcasts. You should be searching the internet. You should be looking at what's going on with your competitors and with people who are suppliers to you. You need to be leveraging what's going on in the world around you so that you really have the capacity to understand what's going on. I think if you stay insular to your organization, you run a massive risk of getting behind. And again, Charles Handy's view is that if you're not constantly transforming your organization and staying ahead of that external environment, you're actually getting behind every day. So I would say we need to be learning more. There is a requirement on us to be constantly learning and evolving, and that bringing in that information, that data from around us is hugely important. Now, when I say learning on an ongoing basis, that doesn't necessarily just mean going and doing another degree or doing another qualification. It might be actually attending a conference on customer service, or it might be going and actually looking at how another organization is using drones to do the work. Yeah. So don't get stuck on formal education. It could be just leveraging little bits and pieces. I would say I watch about 10 to 15 podcasts a week to keep myself abreast of what's going on. And I'm always looking for new ideas of what's coming on. Certainly in my field, neuroscience is developing hugely fast around some of the work that we do in psychology, but also so is neuro-linguistic programs. So There's so many different avenues. I need to stay ahead of all of those to see what's going on, what's changing. Our understanding of human interaction has changed dramatically. So if I'm getting behind, I'm not actually helpful to my clients. And the same goes for all of us as leaders. We need to be looking in our external environment and bringing that information in to help us to grow our organization and to transform our organization on an ongoing basis. So that's the third aspect. The fourth aspect is that in our individual teams, we need to be building continuous improvement activities. It's no good just organizationally driving change, but we want each team to be looking at ways they can change things. And the only way they can gonna do that is by going and asking their clients, their customers, their suppliers, their internal stakeholders, their external stakeholders for feedback. And so we want to be developing that capacity in our teams. They should be constantly getting feedback, adapting what they're doing, finding new ways of doing things, looking at new ways of being. And organizationally, they really need to be driving that continuous improvement piece. As an organization, you don't want to have to do long-winded team reviews because the teams become lazy about continuous improvement. You want them to be agile. You want them to be constantly evolving what they're doing so that they as teams are staying ahead of the curve. Again, as much as individuals staying static is unhealthy for our organizations, teams staying static is unhealthy for our organizations. If you look at, again, an easy space to look is AI. How are our teams implementing AI that's relevant to them? Have they done anything about it? Are they using the tools that are around them? Have they developed things? I was with a policy writing team just recently, and we were talking about, the length of time it takes to write policies. And so I gave them a challenge. I said, okay, you write a policy, tell me the topic, give me your old policy, and you go away and do your normal process, and then we'll throw the same thing into ChatGPT and see what it does. And they went away. I think it took about 3 or 4 weeks to go through the process of writing the policy and getting a first draft ready for socializing with their stakeholders. In 5 minutes, ChatGPT had generated something that was just as adequate and could have been a first draft. So, I think we need to be challenging our teams. Are you leveraging? And I know that a lot of companies are super scared of AI, but why not leverage AI in a way that's effective? Make sure you're using it in a way that's effective. I was delighted to see that a whole bunch of international universities have come out saying that they are going to actively encourage the use of AI in universities. That's a really forward-thinking way. Rather than being afraid of it and, staying away from it, let's get on the front foot with it. Let's use it effectively to develop and grow our team's capability and find new ways of doing things. So we need our teams to be really challenging themselves on a day-to-day basis and building in that continuous improvement. But the only way they're going to do that is if they have some sort of feedback to help them. They need to be getting feedback to support them to develop in this space. So that's really important in terms of transforming our organizations. So we've got those first 4 things that are going to support us. Firstly, a clear vision. Secondly, leaders and an organization that is resilient. And thirdly, really that external networking to bring information in. And fourthly, our teams being continuous in their improvement. And finally, the last aspect is we need to have really demarcated times and opportunities for innovation and creativity. Now, I know that's hard because while a lot of organizations tell me that they attempt innovation and creativity, most of them don't do it very well. I think we kind of do a surface, let's do a little brainstorming session, and that'll be enough. And we are missing a trick here, because if we really cared about transforming our organizations, we would make time for this. It is not something that should be a tack on at the end of a meeting, or at the end of a strategic planning session, or at the end of, a long week. This is something that we need to demarcate out time for, and we need to put aside at least a reasonable amount of time in your 12-month period. You need to be thinking about creative ways of doing things. The Disney strategy is a great one to use, because Disney had a really great way of mapping out that creative process. First, go blue sky. Think about all the possibilities. Then bring it back and question it. And as De Bono says, put your black hat on. Then think about, okay, how do we implement this? So you need all of those strategies for innovation and creativity to be really demarcated well in your organization. And you need to be doing that on a regular basis. Again, not once and wait for 5 years for the next one. You need to be doing this in individual areas and as a whole organization. How are we going to create the next wave of success for our organization or our team? So that needs to be really clearly defined. And it's not okay, as I say, to put aside an hour. You need to have proper time to do this. Well, I worked for one of the big toy companies in my earlier career, and what we used to do with the creative team was send them away for a chunk of time, 2 or 3 days at a time, just to evolve and develop ideas and get creative. So we need to actually, dependent on your organization, you need to find those opportunities. I know that a lot of the big technology companies have special rooms that they use for creative thinking. So we need to you might not be able to afford that as an organization, but dedicating some time and taking it off site, finding better places than your boardroom to do creative thinking is hugely important. You must allow time for this. And creativity doesn't come when I'm sat with a linear approach with my list and my agenda for the day. That's not what we're talking about. Let's get more free-flowing and creative in the way we actually develop our organization and look at that new wave of success that we want to create. So those are some of the key strategies that are really essential if you want to transform your organization. I don't believe that transformational projects are a thing of the future. I think they're very much a thing of the past. I think we want to, and I know we want to build resilient organizations that are agile and can stay ahead of the curve and actually create transformation and create that flow of transformation all the time, so that we're constantly transforming. We're taking on new ideas. We're building new capacity in our people. And so the 5 areas are, first of all, a clear vision. Be clear on your why. Have leaders who are resilient and build resilience into all layers of your organization. Thirdly, have those external networks to bring ideas and information into your organization so that you know what's going on in the world around you and you can respond to it. Fourthly, we need to have teams that are continuously improving and are agile in and of themselves. And finally, we need to have demarcated time for innovation and creativity. So thank you. I hope you found this session helpful. And remember that some of our other podcasts have more detail, particularly on the resilience. One of our earlier podcasts on building leader resilience is actually hugely important. So please feel free to log into those as well. So thank you very much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.